Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I've got your tier list for tier 6 premium tanks in WarThunder. And I actually did this same exact thing yesterday. I released it yesterday for all tier 6 premium planes. And the reason for both of these videos is, one, because tier lists are fun, but more importantly, because I have reviews on pretty much every vehicles in these videos, and it's really difficult to say, oh, well, this one's better, this one's worse in those reviews, and having to do it each and every time, because if that were the case, then the reviews would stretch on for many minutes longer than they ultimately do. So the point of this video, and again, the one previously, are both so that we can get a good idea, at least in my opinion, which ones are the best and which ones are the worst, from rank D through rank S being the best. So that said, let's get into it now, and I'll start off with the Americans. And surprisingly, the Americans only have one tier 6 premium tank, at least as of current. I've got a feeling that's going to change in the nearish future. I can't really say for sure, but there's no reason why it wouldn't when a lot of other countries have 2 or 3. So that said, we have the XM1. Now this vehicle, when it first came out, was like, what, 8.7, 9.0 BR. It was phenomenal. Now it's 9.3 BR. It's got a much larger stable of enemies fighting it. And so, whereas at one point it would definitely be an S rank, I think that not so much the fact that it's 9.3 BR, but rather the fact that so many other great vehicles have been added around it that can now destroy it very easily, I'll put it in a solid A rank. It's still very, very good, but it doesn't have the best armor pen. It's very fast. It doesn't have phenomenal armor, but it does still have some pretty decent armor on the front. Not amazing, but enough to stop heat FS and some APF SDS. So not all too bad. Next up, we have the Leopard 2A4 Premium. Panzerabteilung, if I'm not mistaken, 234, something like that. Anywho, this vehicle, I love the 2A4 so much, and this is pretty much just the 2A4, if I'm not mistaken, without a dozer blade, but with a camo net. And the camo net's pretty interesting because it really doesn't do anything except make it look cool, but arguably it makes it a little stealthier. It doesn't really play into gameplay mechanics so much, at least in my opinion. However, this vehicle, I still consider the 2A4 to be one of the best BR vehicles in game, and even though this is more or less just a copy paste of the regular tech tree plus a cool camo net in the front, I love it. I love it so much. The 2A4 Premium, I'd say it's an S class. I mean, it is phenomenal. It has a great mix of power, armor, speed as well. It's got thermals, only Gen 1, but it does do pretty damn well, and at 10.0 BR, Gen 1 thermals are definitely forgivable. I love that vehicle. Next up, we have the Leopard A1 L44, and this is another vehicle that came out, if I'm not mistaken, around the same time as the XM1 and kind of suffers a very similar fate. In fact, actually, one of the bigger arguments a few years ago was whether or not to get the A1 L44 or the XM1. And I actually have videos on both of those. I'll try to link them below. I mean, they're pretty old, so the audio quality isn't all that good. But regardless, the A1 L44 used to be, in my opinion, probably an A-ranked vehicle. It was very good. It had great mobility, a very good cannon, of course, thermals at its BR, which was nice. And it just had a lot going for it. But at this point in time, you know, I mean, a 120mm equipped Leopard A1 is still a Leopard A1. It just has a bigger cannon on it. And the Leopard A1 is not phenomenal. It's good, but in today's WarThunder, you know, especially with so many auto cannons, it can be destroyed pretty damn easily. So as much as I would like to have nostalgia take over and put this in the A category, I kind of want to say it's a B class. It's kind of average at this point. You know, I almost kind of want to even put it in the C class. Don't really know if I can do that, but I'll put it in the B class because it's still pretty solid, don't get me wrong. But as of right now, the best German premium for the $60 premiums at least to get is the Premium 2A4. 100%, it's the best. This one's still pretty good, especially if you want to build a nice 9.0 lineup. It's not bad at all. It's a good option. Okay, now next up we have the TAM2IP. If you didn't notice, I'm going more or less country to country. The TAM2IP, this is another one. When it first came out, I was in love with it. The more I play Ground RB, the more that Ground RB kind of evolves, the more I realize a few things about it. Now this vehicle, it's got good speed, it's actually got pretty decent armor, so the 2IP means TAM2 improved protection, if I'm not mistaken. Just let me know in the comments below, but I believe that's what the IP means. Either way, it does have more armor. Now the problem with this vehicle is that it only has night vision for the driver, so not for the gunner, not for the commander, for the driver only. It doesn't have thermals either. So it really limits its effectiveness in night fighting. In fact, actually, it's really difficult to use it in night fighting because as soon as you go from driver to gunner sights, you are out of luck. You can't see anything, at nighttime unless there's a flare overhead. So it's a really interesting vehicle. I think its base stats are phenomenal, but the fact that it has no real gunner night optics, doesn't have any thermals, it's very limited in that regard. If you're really good at spotting things with your naked eye from a distance, it's a phenomenal vehicle. It gets over 400 millimeters of armor with the DM33, or armor pen rather, with DM33 APF SDS. It's got good reload. It's got, again, good armor that can hold up actually pretty well to autocannons and SPAA. Other than that, I mean, it's a really good day fighter, and if you're just considering day fighting and you're really good with just spotting things with your naked eye, I'll put it in the A. But being that it has no thermals, I kind of had to put it in the C. I love this vehicle as a vehicle, and I think it's phenomenal. It's actually one of my favorite light tanks to play in game, but again, it's just limited by the fact that it does not have thermals. Next up, we have the T-72 AV Turms, and this is another one that when it first came out, solid S-class vehicle. And one could still actually make the argument for it. It's got good armor, very good cannon. It's got just a ton of great things for it. I think it's got Gen 2 thermals as well. 9.7 VR. It is kind of slow, though. It doesn't have the best turret traverse, and it only has a 3-man crew. So there's a lot of things going for it. There's a lot of things going against it. It's held up surprisingly well at 9.7 VR. It's not kind of taken the fall that the Leopard A1A1 L44 is taken with new vehicles being added, but I kind of want to put it in the S class, kind of want to put it in the A class. I mean, it's kind of like an A plus or an S minus at very best. It's right in the middle. So just for now, I'm going to put it... I'm going to put it in the S class for now. I'm going to look at shifting around this list a little bit later, but we'll see. So next up, we have the T55 AM1. This is another vehicle I love. Russia actually has 3 top tier, or rank 6 rather, premium tanks, and this is one of them. This is an 8.3 VR tank. It features, I believe, composite armors, ATGM, APF SDS, laser rangefinder. It's just a really, really good vehicle overall, and I think at 8.3 VR it actually works really well. It's one of my favorite tanks to use in WarThunder. Between its mix of good mobility, again, power, and decent enough armor, it can actually hold up quite well, especially in a down tier. I'll put this as a solid A category. I mean, it's right there pretty much with the T-72 AV Turms. I think it's a phenomenal tank, but it just falls a little bit short of the T-72 overall. It doesn't have as good of armor relative to BR. It doesn't have as big of a cannon. Again, I mean, even relative to BR, a lot of 105 millimeter cannons are around this time. It has a 100, and it's just not as well-rounded of a package as the T-72 AV Turms is at 9.7, but at 8.3. Next up, we have the 2S38. This one is famous, a troll vehicle, if there ever was one, and easily an S-class vehicle. I mean, it's got 220 plus millimeters of armor pen at max with a fully automatic APF SDS autocannon. I mean, it's just a ridiculous vehicle. It's got, Gen 2 or Gen 3 thermals, very fast. It's based on the BMP-3 chassis, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's just a very good overall vehicle. Not much armor, of course, but, I mean, this thing can just Shrek enemies without even blinking. I mean, it's just a phenomenal vehicle, easily an S-class. And again, I'll try to link my reviews for all of these vehicles down below. I do have reviews for pretty much all of them. The only ones I can kind of think of offhand that are kind of old are the XM1 of the Leopard A1A1 L44. So I might not link those, but the other ones I definitely will. So next up, we have the Challenger TS. This is a very controversial one, I feel like. A lot of people are going to be a little upset with where I put this, but I'll try to, again, rank it fairly. So it's got a 120 millimeter cannon. It's a rank 6, of course, BR 9.7 vehicle, and it's got a phenomenal reload rate. I mean, one of the best in game. I believe it's over around 5 seconds when fully aced with the crew. So it's just really, really good. It's got a powerful enough cannon, around 400 millimeters of armor pen, which isn't all too bad in my opinion. Of course, you have like the T-72 AV Turms that does a little bit better. I believe the Leopard 2A4 does a little bit better than that, as well as the ZTZ 96 AP. Both or all of those do a little bit better than this, but of course, it does have some pretty good reload, and that really makes a big difference. Now, what it doesn't have, it only has Gen 1 thermals, not too big of a sin at 9.7 BR, but it's very slow, and its armor isn't really all that good. This is one of the slower MBTs in-game. It's just, I really want to put it in a very good spot, because actually, as I reviewed it, I had a really good time with it. And again, I'll try to link my reviews down below, but I had a really good time with it, and I thought it was a much better tank than I initially expected. But my biggest problem with it as a tank, again, is just that it has a really good gun, or a good enough gun, but a really good reload speed, but everything else on it is kind of lacking. So because of that, again, you guys are going to hate me for this, I'm going to put it in the C rank. I think it's a really good vehicle, but for most people, and this came out at the same time as the premium 2A4, most people are probably going to use the 2A4, and because it's better, even at 10.0 BR, it's just a better 10 than this is a 9.7 BR vehicle. It's not a bad vehicle by any means. If you guys benefit from a really fast reload like how I do, I used it and it felt like a rank A, but I know it's not. It's just not that good. When you get hot with it, it's a rank A. But in every other situation, probably the best way to say it is that it's a rank C. Now we have the Ruicat 105. This is an incredibly fun vehicle, and until the Challenger DS came out, this was the top ground vehicle for the British ground tech tree. Phenomenal vehicle, like I said, incredibly fun, very fast, has a very strong cannon. I believe it can fire DM33 with over 400 millimeters of armor pen, which at 8.7 BR is pretty much just a one-shot kill. It's got the 105 millimeter cannon, so it's not a 120. If it had a 120, I suspect it would be 9.0 BR. Overall, I mean, again, just a ton of fun. Really, really good vehicle. It can shoot through pretty much anything. Great for flankers. People like a lot of fast action. I'm going to put this in the A rank. I think it's just a great vehicle, despite the fact that it has very little armor. I mean, that kind of comes with the territory with this sort of vehicle. I mean, look at the 2S38. That has very little armor as well. Put that at rank S. I think that this is at 8.7 BR, deserving of an A rank. It's just a very good vehicle overall. Next, we have the Type 74G, and this is a Japanese 9.0 BR premium ground vehicle, and it's pretty similar actually to the Leopard A1A1L44, except that it has a little bit more armor. I think it's about as fast. It functions actually very similarly. It's very strange that they are very similar vehicles. I mean, they have more or less kind of the same qualities. This one has a 105 millimeter cannon as opposed to the A1A1L44, but this makes up for the Type 74G with a little bit better armor and some other things as well. So with that being said, I'll put it as a B rank as well. I think it's a perfectly decent vehicle. Unfortunately, not many people play it, but I think it's actually a really, really fun vehicle for what it is, and quite capable at 9.0 BR. Not phenomenal, not great, not bad either. It's just right in the middle. Next, we have the ZTZ96AP, and fun fact, the Chinese ground tech tree, despite the fact that it is a fairly new tech tree, already has 3 tier 6 premium tanks. The Americans, again, only have 1, and they also have a squadron vehicle premium tank as well, so it's a very interesting thing that they have going there. But the ZTZ96AP, I love this vehicle. It's a real tough one for me to place. It's got really good armor. In fact, actually, it's kind of like the Chinese version of the Turms. Very, very similar in many ways. It's got, in my opinion, slightly better armor. I think it has a little bit better mobility. Not much, though, but it also has a slightly lesser cannon, or at least APF SDS shell. So, I mean, overall, very, very similar tank. I kind of want to put this in the A class, kind of want to put this in the S class, very similar to how the Turms was. But, you know what? I'm going to put this here in the A class for now. I think it's really good, though. But, it probably deserves to be in the A class. Next up, we have the T69-2G. I don't believe you can even purchase this anymore, but pretty much this is like a T55 more or less for the Russians, except for the Chinese, and it's just not all that great. It has okay APF SDS, but its reload speed is pretty bad. It's around 9 to 10 seconds, depending on crew reload for your average speed. It's got a mediocre turret traverse speed. It's not got the best mobility. Armor is lacking. It only has night vision. So it's not really all that good, in my opinion. And when I say this, I don't want you to think that this is a terrible tank, but insofar as premium Chinese ground forces vehicles are concerned, this is the worst one by a pretty good margin. Next up, we have the WMA 301. I love this vehicle. In fact, actually, up until about a week or two ago, I would have put this in the A rank, but it does have a lot of deficiencies with it. Namely, it's really bad armor, and it doesn't really make up for it with a lot of other things. I mean, like, you can spit on this thing and it dies. It's got Gen 2 thermals, it's got APF SDS, it has a tandem charge ATGM, a really effective vehicle overall, but again, it has some pretty major deficiencies as well. It does not have a great turret traverse speed. Its reload is so it has a lot of great things with it, a lot of meh things with it, but I think it's still very, very powerful. Probably an A or an A+. It's a fantastic vehicle, one of my favorite ground vehicles in WarThunder. It's really, really good, really, really fun. Next, we have the OF40 MTCA. This is an Italian rank 6 BR 8.7 vehicle. It only has night vision, and it does not have that best cannon in the world, not the best APF SDS. I believe it can only shoot through around 350-ish millimeters of armor. It has some pretty mediocre armor itself, in that really it can only defend against some auto cannons, but that's pretty much it. But this is a very, very fast vehicle, one of the fastest MBTs in game. It's got a phenomenal zoom rate. It's around 15.9 times zoom. It's got thermals, which means that you can really snipe very well with this. Flank and snipe with this vehicle is amazing. I personally love it. This is a vehicle that I'm just a huge fan of overall, but it has a lot of deficiencies that it struggles to make up for. So as much as I would love to put it in the B category, I'll probably put it in the C category for now, but very, very good if you're kind of a speed freak. It's a really, really fun vehicle. Next, we have the VRCC, the vehicle that essentially took over for the OF40 MTCA, and this is more or less a Centauro with a slightly different thermal system and armor layout. Even though it's got the same thickness for armor, it's just slightly different with how it's laid out. I like it a lot, but it feels like a lesser version of the Ruacat 105. It's a little bit slower. It doesn't really, it doesn't have as much armor pen as the Ruacat 105, and it's at 9.0 BR, whereas this is 8.7. So I think that it's a little bit worse than the Ruacat 105, and because of that, I'll put it at B. It's still really, really capable vehicle, and again, it's one of those vehicles that when you get hot with it, man, you do really, really well, but there's a lot of time in between where it's just, you're being killed by somebody spitting on you because it has no armor. Next, we have the Super AMX-30 rather. This is a French 9.0 BR ground vehicle, and it's actually quite interesting because it has a fairly unique cannon amongst MBTs. A lot of these MBTs use more or less the same type of ammunition, the same cannons and all that. You see a lot of it being made by either Germans or English or the British, and so this is just a totally French design through and through, and it uses a French cannon. Now, it's got a very, very high power to weight ratio. In my opinion, actually, it's phenomenal in that regard. It's got thermals, Gen 1. It's a really, really fast vehicle, very much an overlooked vehicle, and it's got actually pretty good armor pen for 9.0 BR. It's around 360 at max, so it's really fun. It's kind of almost like an MBT version of the VRCC in many ways. It's got slightly more armor. It's got a slightly better cannon, but ultimately, and it's also very fast, and it's better off-road than the VRCC. But again, this has Gen 2 thermals, this does not. I think it's actually very similar in how it plays insofar as you can kind of get when it comes to an MBT compared to a wheeled vehicle that's more or less a tank destroyer or a light tank. So I'll actually put this in the B rank. I really like it as a vehicle, but it's just kind of Next up, we have the CV90105 XC8. This took over the TML. So the TML in WarThunder used to be like a D or a C rank vehicle. I thought it was meh, and a lot of people otherwise thought it was meh. It's not bad at all, but the XC8 is just phenomenal. I mean, this thing started off at 9.3 VR. It's now 9.7 VR. It features a really good autoloader. It features over 400 millimeters of armor pen. It's got okay enough armor at the front to defend against some autocannons, but it's got Gen 2 thermals, really good optics. I mean, just awesome mobility. This thing is really, really good overall. I mean, it's tough to put it in the A or the S rank. I think you can probably do either or, but I'll put it in the S rank just because of the fact that it has such a fast reload and it's still really, really powerful with its cannon. Phenomenal vehicle, one of the best in game. in my opinion. Next, we have the Leopard 1A5NO. This is pretty much just the Leopard 1A5, but for the Swedish ground tech tree. It's a perfectly good vehicle, but there's not really all too much you can do with it. This suffers the same fate as the other Leopard ones in that it was really good at one point in time, but it has since become kind of a meh vehicle over time because of other vehicles getting better. There was actually this car review I read years ago, I think it was about the Nissan Sentra, where they said in like 2013 the Nissan Sentra was perfectly good, but in 2017 it wasn't, because not because the Sentra got any worse, but because every other vehicle got better. And so in much the same way, we have this vehicle. It's still good. It's just in comparison, I mean, there have been so many other vehicles added to the game, especially with autocannons, that can just wipe this thing off the face of the earth. And to be honest with you, actually, it took me less time to have a really good match with the 1A5NO than it did with the XC8, but I think overall it's just not all that fast. It has mediocre armor, just not good armor. It only has Gen 1 thermals. It's just overall. I'll put it in the C rank just because it's still actually plenty good. It's kind of like a C plus, B minus in a way. It's still really, really good, but for now. Now we're on the last two. We have the Merkava 2D. This is a very heavily armored vehicle, 9.3 BR. It's got okay maneuverability, not great. Probably a little bit poor actually in the maneuverability, or subpar would be the better way to put it category. It's really, really powerful when it comes to armor. This thing will tank shots like no one's business. Most MBTs just kind of go up after 1 or 2 hits, but this one will take a lot of penning hits and still survive. And really that's what it was kind of meant for, was just to survive. And so it doesn't really have the best cannon, doesn't have the best APF SDS at 9.3 BR. It's almost kind of like if they took the XM1 but put it into turtle form rather than speedy. So it's so tough, but I think overall you lose more in terms of mobility than you gain in terms of armor versus the XM1. So I'll put it here in the, not that these are at all shared designs because they're not, but again, just kind of using the likeness that this is speedy, this is armor. I'll put it in the B class. I think it's really, really good, and it's actually a really nice high-tier vehicle for the Israel tech tree, but it's not really all that great. And then finally, we actually have the Shock Cadelet. This is a very much an overlooked tier 6 vehicle. It's pretty much a heavily modified Centurion, and it's you can do quite well with it. It has pretty good APF SDS. It fires around 330 or 350 millimeters of armor pen, if I'm not mistaken. It's got night vision only for the driver, not for the gunner. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. It's not all that fast. You're really only going to be going around 30-ish unless you're on a road, 30 kilometers per hour. It's got reload. It's overall an okay vehicle. It's better than the T69 2G, but I really don't know. I mean, I can't put it in the same category as the TM2IP or the Challenger 2DS, or the Challenger DS rather. So I'll put it here in the D class. It's just very mediocre. It's not bad, and especially on sale, it's actually a pretty decent deal, but it's just meh in my opinion. So looking back at this, we have the 2A4 Premium as the S rank. The Terms, it's like an S minus. We have the 238 or 2S38 rather as an S rank, of course. XC8 as an S rank. I think that's pretty solid. The XM1 definitely an A rank. The T55AM1, yeah. Rurocat 105, yeah. I mean ZTZ 96AP, yeah. I mean, looking at all this, I mean the L44, what was that? The T69 or Type 69 or whatever it is, 2G or whatever it is. I'm not really good with nomenclatures, but it's not bad. VRCC, AMX, yeah. I mean, all of these, looking back at them, they kind of belong where they belong. So yeah, I mean, actually, I fully, looking back at this, there are no further amendments I'd like to make, and I use the word amendment because I'm an American and we use that word. At least I would like to imagine that we use that word quite a bit. So that said, this is my tier list where I place all these vehicles. Like I said, I mean, if there could be like a plus or minus category, or if I could even put them between categories, I would have done that with a few of these. So it's just kind of a limitation on the software, or the website rather, that I'm using. But overall, again, I mean, I think that this is a pretty, hopefully a credible list for you guys, and hopefully, at least from my perspective, puts a little bit of this into picture for you guys, because, again, you know, there were so many of these vehicles out there that I've done reviews on, I think on all of them, but the problem is just that I could say, oh, well, this is a 6 out of 10, this is a 7 out of 10, but you don't really know how it fares in comparison to other vehicles. Hopefully this list puts that to rest, at least for my opinion, having driven all of these in combat probably dozens of times each. So that said, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Please consider subscribing. I'll try to link the aviation version of this also in the comments below, as well as my my reviews for these vehicles. But you know, it really mean the world to me if you guys subscribe, if you consider it at the very least. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.